welcome to Reflections on Interpretation, talking story with guides and interpreters. And I am Tim Merriman, your host, coming to you from the Big Island of Hawaii. Bill Gwaltney, my co-host, is here. Bill, what are you doing these days?
Well, Tim, I'm doing some interpretive training, having become a heart interpretive trainer. I'm doing some consultation. I do some work with the state of California in particular, specific to making their interpretation more inclusive and holistic in a state that sees itself as very progressive, but whose history is often not.
Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Villamaino. I'm an interpreter here in Worcester, Massachusetts. I work for state parks, and then I also independently participate with a group called the 1812 Marine Guard, where I portray a naval surgeon aboard the USS Constitution.
Toby?
Well, this whole thing smacks of nepotism, frankly, but I am Tim Merriman's son, and I spent 10 years for SIU as the Mac fix-it guy because nobody else wanted to fix Macs. Then I spent many years fixing Alienware PCs, gaming machines, VR headsets, because nobody wanted to fix those either. And now, the last 2 years, I've been helping to solve the AI dilemma for the university because nobody wants to deal with that either. And so I pretty much just take the weirdest, most obnoxious problems academia has, and I attempt with mixed results to find a way forward.
Toby's the assistant director of the Center
That's
for
right.
Visual Expression at Southern Illinois University, which is my alma mater.
And our website is cvex.ai. You can look at all the projects I've worked on or with in the last couple of years.
Well,
They're very weird.
I have some questions and things related to interpretation I will bring up, but I want to deal up front with one that Bill just brought up because he shared a Stephen Fry video with me that kind of gets at the art world's complaint, especially the soul of life is that humans create things, and that ChatGPT intrudes into that and becomes the creator, and it makes humans more lazy. They're less likely to do their own work, and it throws not only artificial creation into the mix, but stolen material into the mix because I don't think he went there specifically, but we went there and having this discussion. Yesterday, just to bring everybody up to speed, yesterday we did a 3-hour seminar with 13 interpretive folks, and Toby was there as our specialist on AI, VR, and gamification. And we talked about a lot of these things and introduced some of the AI tools that are available to folks they might not know about. But I wanted, Toby, if you would, to mention Pinckney. Is it Dr. Pinckney?
It is now. He's actually an MFA just like me. So it was Pinckney Benedict MFA for a long time. But since the surgery school absorbed him, they insist that he be called Dr. Benedict now, which he finds hilarious.
Okay.
And he says he'll know that the SIU med school is really hard up for talent if he's ever called into surgery.
Oh my. Well, part of the story is that the AI gamification VR program with your unit was created by a guy who was known for his creative writing.
Yeah, part of what we were discussing yesterday is the weirdest thing about this technology, which is neither there are evil things this technology has been doing in our hands. There are good things it's been doing, but the most interesting and really neutral thing about it is that you talk to it. Its interface is human language, and that's never happened before. And if AI had done nothing else right or wrong, that would be incredibly noteworthy. And so we have a situation here where my customers include computer science professors who can just write code that works from memory. They could write an app, click compile, and be certain it worked. They are experts in coding. And they get worse results out of an LLM like GPT than Pinckney does. And Pinckney is a novelist and a short story award winner and has taught creative fiction for 20 years. He knows how to form a paragraph in his head and write it down. And so when he communicates with AI, it is thoroughly, it is detailed, it is robust, and it produces a good result. He loves working with the technology.
I want to say we're going to have this discussion about AI and interpretation. I think for me, it's like everything else I've dealt with in my life. Automobiles kill tens of thousands of people a year in the United States. There also are ambulances, they are our police cars, they are how we convey our food and beverages to communities. They do all these wonderful things that they get in the wrong hands or with someone who's inebriated or stoned or whatever, they end up being a very dangerous tool. Um, and I think of every invention that comes along has a downside. And the other part of that is that ethics about how we use technology don't evolve as fast as the technology does.
Oh.
A bunch of bright people in a robotics laboratory create a robot that operates incredibly because it maybe is better wired than the humans that it's based on.
Mm-hmm.
But then we hand it weapons and we send it into war or whatever,
Yep.
because that's what somebody paid to get that robot to do. And the ethical considerations of all that come along decades later. We're very slow to.
Unless it directly affects and threatens legislators. And then we move at the speed of thought. When this technology came along, just like what happened to Stephen Fry, which is that they used an AI to reproduce his voice and use it for something he didn't approve of or benefit from. And that should be and basically is illegal, and the AI companies know that. But somebody immediately during the presidential election of the United States duplicated Joe Biden's voice and had it robocalling random houses to say, "This is Joe Biden. Don't bother voting. We got it locked up. Just stay home." And that was legislated overnight. The federal government flew into action to say, "Okay, AI, you can't do that. You can't imitate any candidate, Trump, Kamala, didn't matter." And so when it directly affects them, Congress immediately gets it and does what needs to be done. Now, the trick for everything else here is to get the judiciary and Congress to pay attention to these other little issues. Maybe there are some regulations that are needed in the art world or the music world or the writing world or just in general. And generally the position of Lena Khan, who was our former FTC head, who's a brilliant person, I love her, was that existing laws of copyright and fair use do govern AI. AI is subject to them, and then you'll handle it on a case-by-case basis with precedent. But I think that's a good immediate Band-Aid, but we're going to have to do more, and we're going to have to think about it more, and we have a lot of fights ahead of us.
Interestingly, a federal judge just ruled about 3 days ago that copyrighted books are fair use for AI training.
Yep.
So,
That's a huge one.
It's a huge one, and it's going to be legislated. It's going to be not legislated, brought through the courts, appealed and such through all the way to the Supreme Court, I'm sure. But there's also that difference between what needs to be legislated and then the stuff that's not legislated, that's our individual ethics. And that's what each of us are going to have to decide.
Yeah.
How much am I going to use this for? What am I going to use this? Because there's some things you can't legislate.
And Tim, thanks for bringing this topic up in this particular way. One of the things I think I heard in your opening remarks is that when technology advances, ethics doesn't always keep pace, and I think that's exactly right. And I think that therefore this is an interesting and dangerous time. It's sort of like self-driving cars. I'm not ready to buy one. I know that it's an interesting concept. They've been talking about it since the 30s, but I think that in order to make artificial intelligence best suit the needs of interpreters, I think we need to consider multiple points of view. And I think that right now it's particularly difficult because so many parks and museums, zoos are using more and more volunteers. And my recent experience with volunteers suggests that, they don't have the experience. That means sometimes they are subject to intellectual laziness. In particular places, there's a lack of oversight and supervision, and human beings also are affected by what I call conflict avoidance. Those all combine to create some very potential problems with any kind of new technology. And as somebody has said, we are, cave age people with nuclear weapons. That's on the military side. That's how we end up killing so many damn people all the time. But anyway, thanks for bringing that up. Those are the big points I wanted to bring up. I will say one other thing, and this is about people. This is not about the technology. Not only have there been some photographic artificial intelligence hoaxes, which sadly at the beginning seemed to focus on women of color, their AI is also being used to demean and savagely depict African American women in ways that I find just horrifying. And sadly, those you don't have to go far to find them on YouTube.
I'm glad you brought that up because one of the things I did my 2-mile walk this morning, picking up litter with Akamai, my dog, my personal trainer. And as we were walking along, I got to thinking, the people that adopt these new technologies the fastest are the scammers, the plotters, the criminals, the ones that are going to test the limits of what it'll do because they have no ethical boundaries. They are simply going to take it to extremes. Now, I have that concern. We see this on football fields or in basketball courts where the referees or the umpire seems to be tilted towards one team a little bit. They're calling fouls a little faster for them than they do for the other. Well, imagine a world where only criminals and imposters use AI, but the rest of us go, I'm not going to touch it because it's evil. When we could actually make our persuasive arguments with Congress, our influential discussions with guests, with visitors to parks, zoos, museums, nature centers, aquariums, we could engage them better if we used it to come up with better themes, better talking points. But we say, no, I'm not going to use it because it does evil things. Well, guess what? All those people that are going to use it wrong they're still there. They're not going to care that you went, no, I'm not going to use it.
Well, Tim, that's another great point. And I will confess in public that part of my hesitancy is that it has made me angry. Yeah. When history is depicted improperly, when women of color and entire groups of in this case, Black women are attacked and demeaned, it makes me angry. And that probably accounts for some of my perspective.
Well, one of the things I admire about this silly new technology called Instagram and TikTok is there's some brilliant young people, especially, who are going on there and are debating the people who have, I guess, what I would call a bad attitude. They're still mistreating people of other color, other gender, other identities, and they're calling them out. And they're doing it in a very public way, and they're doing it with a very big audience because some of these kids, and I say kids because I watch one 18-year-old guy that has tens of thousands of followers that debates people on political issues better than anybody I see in Congress debate them. And he's doing it in a medium that is very hot because he's got a lot of listeners and they're young and maybe haven't voted yet. And he's saying, get concerned. You need to be involved in this. And I enjoy these people. I mean, I also enjoy the Fries and the Jane Goodalls and the people in the world that are senior scientists that are on these new media and doing great things there. But I'm thrilled to see these young people engaging. And I'm especially concerned that interpreters need to not be hands off because they work for a government agency. And government agencies right now are very guarded about what they will allow or what they will do.
To Bill's point about these things, one of my grad students presented at Oxford on the racial bias in image AI, if you've used the generative image AI, because when you ask it to draw Becky, you get a white woman. When you ask it to draw a hero, you would get a white person. This is like a year or two ago. Initial image AI just looked at our photographs, our art, and went, that's art. that's photography. Got it. I can copy that, or I can iterate on that even. It's amazing technology, but it learned what art is from us. And boy, do we have some dumb ideas. Now, the current version, you get diversity. We were playing with it yesterday saying draw a park ranger, and we got many genders, many ethnicities, many backgrounds. It got the patches wrong every time, but it looked like a park ranger, and it could have been anybody from anywhere at any park. So that's progress. And Dejanay, my grad student, her experiments, when she would ask it to draw Dejanay, her name, it would give her an African American woman. So the AI was picking up on our biases. And when those people are using AI to create hateful images, they're like Dad says, we invented the hammer. You can build a house with a hammer, or you can hit someone with it. They are hitting people with it. And I really think the blame and the anger is righteous and should be directed at the source.
Jerks are going to be jerks, and they're always going to, in addition to the scammers, the people who are trolls out there are always going to adapt to the newest technology, and it's human nature, unfortunately.
One of the questions we brought up related to interpretation is can we do a better job of making our experiences or our programming adapt to very specific audiences because we use AI?
I think it's one of those things that it gives us more time to prepare. So if I'm using AI to prepare a program and I've got a bunch of different potential audiences, I don't have enough hours in the day to come up with a list of potential techniques for each of those audiences because I'm still hopefully spending a lot of time in the public doing programs and doing visitor services. So if in the same time that I could think of stuff to work with three different audiences, especially if you're at a site like Grand Canyon or one of those biggies where you're getting people from all over the world, you can instead use AI to supplement your work, and you can come up with we'll just double it six or eight different customizations for audiences. Then yeah, I think it can, if trained properly and if it knows what it's doing, you can absolutely use it to connect with more different audiences. And I think that'll especially help interpreters who are newer. Somebody who's been around for a while could probably do it on the fly, but a newer interpreter seeing this either because they're typing it or somebody else typed it and they've got it in front of them will give them that thing to think about. And then when they see the audience and they adapt and it becomes muscle memory over the long run.
Well, one of the things that we discussed yesterday in the seminar, and that I have another one coming up July 17th. I still have 3 available seats in it. If anybody wants to sign up, go to interpretivetraining.com. One of the points that I've tried to make is that I've been doing this 50 years and I'm pretty experienced at developing a theme. It doesn't take me 30 seconds you give me a topic and I'll come up with a theme that's probably pretty provocative and might even be useful. But I've been taking themes that I've developed through the years and plugging them into Chat GPT, into my heart approach assistant, which is well adapted to the heart training program. And it identifies a strong theme very clearly as being a complete sentence, having tangibles and intangibles, specific and interesting. And it answers the question, what should this mean to my audience? And it comes up with better themes, better talking points, and more ways to make my program or experience interactive in 30 seconds than I've managed to come up with in 50 years.
When you talk to GPT about interpretation themes, it has learned from you. It's learned from Lisa. It's learned from you two, Bill and Matt. If you've ever publicly written, this is how you ought to do a such and such post or a sign or blah, blah, blah. It's learned from your heroes. What it really is like a giant stew of knowledge. And the thing about the technology that is amazing, other than its language interface, is that it's great at finding a needle in a haystack. So in a haystack made of interpretive knowledge, when you give it a direct, what's the best way to do this? You're getting a little bit of you're getting a little bit of 1,000 other people who've thought about this. So it is a good way to get maybe a better solution to a problem than you've ever come up with on your own, because no one is an island. And the whole reason that, you do these trainings and people go to conferences and things is to swap ideas and swap knowledge and kind of, do you have a better way to do this? Am I doing this the hard way on my own over here? Help me out. And GPT's a good assistant in that respect.
Yeah, and I guess the other part of it is I think of what Bill has done in his career is he has been good at getting non-traditional voices involved in national parks. The Merino uh, story that we did on a podcast is a very important one, bringing Latino families to national parks and getting them very involved. Uh, and many of those families are still very involved because of what he did. Can we reach non-traditional audiences for interpretive sites better by using AI tools? What do you think?
I think that's a great question. And one of the things I struggle with, Tim, is that it's hard to know where people go to gather information. At least it is for me. I've got a Civil War roundtable now that focuses on the African American experience, and we will have these absolutely blockbuster speakers, and we get 4 or 5 attendees. Now, some of them go back and look at it later, and we don't have all the technology to do the button counting. But you would think that with these kinds of presenters and with and the fact that we're able to share when and how we're going to do it on Zoom, you would think people would be lining up, but that's not been our experience to this point. So finding out where people get their information, I think AI can help us generate more interest if we know where to send the information. And that's still a puzzle for me.
Well, I guess what I always hope is that we don't sit back and just be critics and pundits about all of this, that we figure out what we actively do to make it better. I mean, my example is I'm feeding my art approach assistant in ChatGPT documents that I value that I think give great guidance to what we do next. Like I've got Sam Ham's article on quote from Tilden through interpretation, understanding, through understanding appreciation, through appreciation protection. I fed that article in because I felt it gives some good background on that kind of social marketing point of view related to interpretation. But you've made the point several times in the past with me, Bill, that you see images show up that represent historic figures and they're not wearing the right uniform or the right insignia or any of that sort of thing. AI sources can be fed the right information. They can be fed pictures. They can be fed data that corrects that. Don't we need to do that?
Well, I mean, I guess the more I think about this and talk with you folks about it, I'm not sure if I had a place I knew I could put that information to change things, I'd be there probably, all day and half the night. But a couple of little points I had is that I think that on some level, I still look to interpreters to do the research. I think to feed in the tenets of what the place is, the sort of perspective meanings and sophisticated thinking. I think the danger here is where there's sophisticated technology, but not sophisticated intellectual opportunities. I love the idea in your question number 6, how you can use it to make lesson plans, to transcribe oral histories. And I'm thinking it might be a great tool to help find illustrations, even if the AI illustrations are not yet appropriate. There are people who did, photographs and illustrations in the past. But my last point on this line is, wouldn't it be interesting to do an experiment and take a handful of experienced interpreters and have them use AI to come up with an interpretive program themes outline, and then have some people that are pretty new to the project and see if there are differences between old timers and new timers.
That's your assignment, Matt. Start today, but next week would be fine.
I was actually just thinking of something like that earlier today, and like as I'm building the GPT and I'm focusing on themes now. I just started it this morning. And I was relooking at some of the themes that it generated, and they had a little bit more of a management. Some of them had a little bit more of a management tone than I would have liked. And you need to have that experience to know what can I use, how can I adapt, how can I edit these, and then program it so that it doesn't make those mistakes again, because you do want to save time, have it learn from the mistakes. But if you just are giving a brand new interpreter, especially not even using a specific GPT that they've programmed, it's not gonna really help them too much, and it might actually hurt. I had when I first started playing with ChatGPT, I said, write me a theme for a program on X. And it gave me a whole one-page document. I'm like, well, it clearly doesn't know what a theme is. So we're going to have to work on that. Yeah, then I got into and eventually built my own, or I'm building my own assistant where I can have it save that information rather than plug it into the prompt all the time. But you still have to know what you're doing to be able to get the most out of it.
Toby brought up the example of Notebook. Explain how Notebook works and why it's a little different from the Chat GPT.
Notebook, sure. The LLMs that people are experiencing that have been released to the public for the last 2 years are generalists. They are the proverbial jack of all trades. The kid, the brilliant 200 IQ kid who's been to the first class, but only the first class and 1,000 different subjects. And part of what benefit you get from doing a custom GPT is you tell it, exclude everything that doesn't directly relate to interpretation. Never mind algebra, never mind literature, never mind French history. Let's just talk about interpretive themes. And GPT goes, okay. And suddenly you get better answers, more focused answers. You get a better, more capable assistant. And Notebook is an extreme version of this. Notebook, you have to first give it a document, and you can give it the Bible. You can give it all of Lord of the Rings in PDF format or whatever. You can give it all of Sherlock Holmes. And then those specific documents become its knowledge base. It will not answer questions outside of that knowledge base. It will not hallucinate or make anything up. It will not lie to you. And whatever results you go, which is the one with the giant dog? And it goes, here's Hound of the Baskervilles. Here's the pages on which the animal appears. You can click these links to go to specific passages about it. And of course, being a super helpful AI, it'll spoil the ending for you almost instantaneously. But Notebook is free from Google, notebooklm.google.com. And when I'm in a room full of people who have all this, what we call received wisdom of how AI is useless or evil or purely evil, I show them Notebook. And without fail so far, every time someone sees Notebook goes, that's a great use of the technology. That's beneficial. That's focused. It's ethical. It only has what I give it. So if I give it something that I shouldn't give it, I'm the one who committed the crime. So it's a great tool.
I have a question about that, though.
Yeah.
If someone creates a notebook that would be useful to other people, can it be shared?
Yes.
Now, Bill, let me go to this whole thing of if someone took Notebook and made a real effort to build the documentation into it that had been thoroughly vetted, you trust its accuracy and all of that, and then shared that with the larger professional community and said, you're going to get your information about the Civil War from a variety of sources. Some are totally unreliable, some are very reliable. This particular notebook has been vetted by a group of experts, and it contains only what we consider extremely as reliable as can be possible.
That sounds super legit to me, although I'm going to guess some people would throw rocks and claim censorship. One of the hard things about interpretation I'm finding of late is that in many parks at the state, even national level, there's this thin line between public history on one hand, which is careful, thoughtful, and documented, and what I call hobby history or cosplay on the other. And people want everything to be everything all the time, and they actually sort of develop a kind of distaste for academic history that has citations. And that's a human problem. And again, I think a lot of what we're talking about are the human problems associated with this. But Notebook, that sounds highly promising, I got to say.
Well, let me say to you about one other thing you brought up. Volunteers are used a lot of places. I remember 35, 40 years ago, Corky Mayo telling me that there were 69,000 interpretive volunteers in the back then 360 national parks. It's 410 or 12 or something now. Um, and now, Tom Medema recently told me 120,000 interpretive volunteers in national parks these days. He said we had 300,000 before the pandemic, and it's dwindled. Well, my point is if you've got part of what Lisa, my wife, Lisa Brochu, and I did it when we were NAI executives is say the profession is not represented just by the group of people paid by organizations. What this profession does is done by right now, I think around 500,000 people in the United States. Every docent, every museum, every guide for every tour company, they are representing American history, world history. They're representing archaeology, anthropology, geography, all of the sciences. And if they're volunteers, well, as we know, I've known volunteers that have a PhD in the subject they're talking about, and they're very knowledgeable. And I've known some of them to be terrible interpreters because they haven't the interpretive skills. They bury people in information and bore the snot out of them. So, one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this heart program I developed is that you can train beginners. Now, we did that with the Certified Interpretive Guide program. It's no longer a certification, it's a certificate course, still good. It's rather expensive, it's $600. The heart program, I designed it to be delivered in 16 to 24 hours.
Right.
Because I'm concerned that agencies no longer are willing to spend 40 hours training a beginner.
You could not be more correct. And I've used the heart model now 3 times to train interpretive volunteers, of which I am one for Bent's Old Fort and other places here in the Denver area. More volunteers, less time, less money, and no travel.
And that's it. I just think we can't be in that box of it must be live and in person. I think in-person training is always better than this virtual experience. However, I've had someone come into our training from Russia, people from Italy, from Philippines getting up at 2 a.m. to take interpretive training with us. And I'm aware there's a demand internationally for interpretive training. And I'm aware that amongst volunteers, they're not going to pay the $2,000 or $3,000 to go to a location and then pay $600 for the course. We have to have options, and the heart program was designed to create flexible options for training that hopefully we don't keep putting people in front of the public with a smattering of knowledge on the subject, maybe passion for it. Sometimes some of the most passionate people will quickly pick up a story that they hope is true and relate it to the public and find out later that it wasn't true. It was a made up thing.
That reminds me of a time I was doing interpretive training. It was actually the host workshop for some people who were going to be doing something along those lines. I want to try and keep it as relatively anonymous as possible, but it was in a historic setting, and I had the book on historic myths sitting on the table, and we were going to talk about how to debunk myths in the class. And some of the guides who I think were employees of the organization, one of the organizations that was there, picked up the book, and their face kind of like, oh, we've been saying that. We probably shouldn't. And it was so much better that they picked up the book and recognized it on their own rather than it came from me. But volunteers are amazing, and staff are amazing. It's very easy to treat something, and this, kind of transitioning it a little bit back to the AI with the research. There's that institutional knowledge is not always right. These stories that we've told in the parks are not always right. And likewise, the data that we get from ChatGPT and the others, if we're doing research with it, is not always right. It can be a research tool if you know a little bit about it and know to question and have that little radar. I was doing some work with it, and I asked for a specific thing about vinegar and wound cleaning. And it said, yep, and here's a citation from this source, and here's the quote. I'm like, sweet. Because it was a 19th century source, I went to the PDF of the scan. I couldn't find it in there. And, all right, maybe the OCR in that document's not working, quite right. What page is it on? It's like, depending on the edition, page 65 to 67. Like, sweet, it knows different editions. Go to those pages, scan them multiple times. I can't find it. So I said to ChatGPT, "Are you sure that's in there?" It's like, "Oh, actually, it's not." Like, "Oh, okay." And then it says, "Would you like other sources that dude mentioned?" That's like, "That would be great. Thank you." And then it just totally made up five more sources.
Toby,
Like,
talk a bit about how do you get the AI resource you're using, like ChatGPT and an assistant, to be more accurate?
I describe the LLM as a toddler with a 200 IQ. And if you don't give it constant, explicit direction, if you ask it, did you get into the cookie jar? The answer will always be no. Of course I didn't. It needs guidance. It needs you. This is the analogy I like to use is this is not Commander Data from Star Trek. It's not the Terminators from that. It is opponents of the technology say it's just autocomplete on steroids. There's some truth to that. It is a prediction engine. It predicts the answer that it believes you want to hear. And so a lot of times, if you're talking about history and facts and details, you need to start with, you must give me only verifiable facts. If you don't know the answer, you must tell me you don't know the answer, which, by the way, is something I always said when we were hiring IT diagnosticians. If I'm hiring someone to fix computers and solve problems for a living, I say, what about Windows? And they tell me the answer to problems. I say, what about Macs? And if they said, I don't know much about Macs, but I'm willing to learn, you're hired. And if they made stuff up, no thanks. Saying I don't know is a crucial step for GPT. Again, this technology is a little bit based on us. It's not very much like us. It's a tiny fraction of us, but it is a little like us. So you tell it facts only, references only. I want sources. The other thing is the free versions of these AIs are worse about this. They don't have the ability usually to web search. The free versions don't. You pay $20 for GPT, fool around with it for a month. You'll learn a lot more, and you'll learn that the paid version can actively web search, and you can say, don't give me an answer unless you have a working link to a real document. I want to know where you got it. Then you've essentially turned regular GPT into Notebook because it won't lie to you. It won't make things up. It won't try to please you. It is sycophantic, and it is the base version can fudge things. Our history department here thinks about that all the time. They teach the kids, hey, this can help you with formatting. This can help you with pacing of a long paper, a research paper. This can help you with making an outline and all these functional parts of putting together a compelling research document. But you're in charge. You're responsible for the facts. You're responsible for the emotional content of the paper. And that's what I would say is if I was going to make use AI art to draw a bunch of Civil War era things, I would want Bill sitting next to me and go, right or wrong, wrong, do it again, do it again, do it again. Because you can go commission an artist right now to paint you Ulysses Grant, and they'll draw him in a gray uniform. And you'll go, let me make some changes here. They can get it wrong, and so can the technology. So you still want, and this is great news for us, you still want the expert in the driver's seat.
I think that sophistication, supervision, and responsibility have to be at the heart of all of this.
Not a chat bot, not a a screen with a chat bot, press the button and learn about Yellowstone National Park.
Well, I couldn't agree more. We have to have people because, parks are about people. It's about people's expectations. It's about their understanding that there's something of value for them. And you can't do that even with the idea that you press a button and talk to somebody 600 miles away is just offensive to me. But boy, between the administrative issues, the monetary issues, and just sort of apparent lack of caring for these places, not to mention what has been called now improper ideology. I haven't heard terms like that since the Cold War. And it's now part of official perspectives and these codes where you're supposed to write back about things that you think are improper and anti patriotic. It's just stunning, and not in a good way.
Toby, I'm curious if you were giving advice about where does someone go who wants to learn more. I mean, I'm going to say the obvious. I have a 3-hour seminar that you and I do together that is available, and they can go to interpretivetraining.com and learn about that.
This kind of gathering again in the future, where we can, with your help, try to help Notebook become more precise. While we were chatting, I looked up online using AI Possibles bag, which is a fur trade specific item, and they had 5 different ways of being wrong. I'd love to see how we can make something better on purpose. And I'm not sure, Tim, that rises to the level of a podcast, but it's something that's got me pretty excited based on this conversation.
Bill, I just want to say that the concerns you're having are extremely valid, and these are some of the biggest Achilles heels of this technology. And I'll tell you, this Achilles heel goes to misuse. We hear it called AI, and we expect it to be accurate like a computer. We expect it to be just a perfect web search, and this technology is not that. Frankly, no one expected this technology. This technology can't be trusted on its own to provide accurate historical data. It's really a much better assistant than it is replacement for many positions.
That's a great
And so
way
when
to
you
look
use
at
it correctly, it goes very well, and it does miracles. And when you use it wrong, it does atrocities.
Well, you've certainly made my point for me. Folks, I got to go, but thank you so much for being here today. And Tim, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Bill, thanks for jumping in this morning. And
Nice chatting with you,
see you
Bill.
next time. Any final thoughts, Matt? Bill's going to take off.
No, I think that was a great way to end it. It is an assistant, and you need to think of what can I use it as an assistant for, especially with those drudgery tasks, which is a whole different conversation. Because ultimately, as interpreters, our job is to build connections, and generally speaking, for most of us, that means being out in front of the public. So if I have, say, 4 hours of administrative time a week where I'm working on in the back, what can I do with that 4 hours to either multiply my impact, or say I can cut that in half, and everything I was doing in 4 hours, I'm now doing in 2 hours. And that's 2 more hours in front of the public. And who knows who that next person is that you're going to talk to that you would not have talked to otherwise. So it's a great opportunity to be able to increase your impact through either of those scenarios.
And I guess my argument for the future for interpreters is we're still a vital public interface. And I think you're going to see the day where a state park is mowed by a robotic mower that is programmed to cut grassy areas when public isn't present. They might even do it at night.
Mhm.
And I think we're going to see a time when bathrooms are cleaned by a robotic tool that, because again, that doesn't need to be a person. I guess I'm hoping that we get even better at training folks, especially volunteers, docents, seasonals, part-time, temporary hires, because they are the face of a lot of our public agencies, a lot of our museums, zoos, aquariums. I hope we're still out there, both as the paid full-time people doing it, and because even if we're coordinating volunteers, that's our interpretive role. We need to be good at it. We need to understand this new technology is a part of our life. It's not going to go away. Thank you for joining me today for this. Again, if you would like to interact with Toby and I in this environment, we're going to do this again on July 17th. I believe we start at noon and we finish at 3 p.m. Hawaii time. I know that starts at 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, so it's late in the day for somebody on the East Coast. But we did it purposefully because we occasionally get folks from Australia, Philippines, and other places that can join us if we do this later in the day. Also, the HEART course, if you want to learn more about how to make basic training of interpreters and guides more affordable and still cover the basics thoroughly and introduce them to AI, which some other training programs do not do. We'll be doing that August 4th to 6th interpretivetraining.com is where you can sign up. And so I hope you'll take a look. 2 weeks from today, we'll be talking to Monique Thompson, who's a trainer out of Colorado and who also worked in the Peace Corps as a second language instructor there. Thanks also to Mark Stoffel for his beautiful mandolin music, this time Buckminster Waltz from his Coffee and Cake album. We'll see you on here another time. Have a wonderful week. Aloha.